On behalf of all of us here at the National Governors Association, welcome to the final plenary session of our 2022 summer meeting. We've had a great participation here the last few days, and thank you all of us again for joining us here in Portland, Maine. And once again, thank you, Governor Janet Mills, for being just such a wonderful host. This is kind of a bittersweet moment for me because I'm welcoming to the stage our outgoing chair, Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson, who has been such a tremendous partner, leader this last year. We've become good friends, and I hope that friendship continues. I know it will. But we've got great leadership coming in behind him. This is a forward-looking organization, and we're going to keep the momentum going. And we're doing great things, and we're going to continue to do great things. So I'm going to leave it at that for now and turn it over to our chair, Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson.
Thank you, Bill. And if you enjoyed last night's show as much as I did, I hope you'll give Bill and his team a round of applause for an excellent conference today. This is our third and final plenary session of the NGA summer meeting. And as I have experienced my final week as NGA chairman, I've been struck by the importance and the value of our work together. Collectively, elected officials have a pretty low approval rating these days. Now, I think governors are an exception to that. That reflects a lot of our national leadership, perhaps. But honestly, I think that if more people could be in the rooms that in which we have been working, whether it is the governor's session today where we're working on bipartisan issues and communicating with each other, or in our meetings here today, that if people could be in these rooms, then they would be encouraged to see governors working together across the aisle, and they would actually have more confidence in our institutions of democracy. And so what the NGA does is very important for those reasons as to what we're trying to accomplish every day in solving problems in our states. In this closing session, I just wanted to make a couple of points. First of all, I want to thank each of the governors here for your support of my initiative over the last year. It's been important to me, it's important for our nation, and for our sponsors that have made this possible and helped to fund it. You have made a difference and a lasting change in the direction of education in America. I also want to applaud Governor Phil Murphy, who will be coming to the podium shortly, for his new chair's initiative that he will be talking about. But it's something that we're passionate about. I share with you, and I thank you for leading our country in that. And then I wanted to make a request, and that is that while my chair's initiative has finished, and I see Governor Hogan here, who's led an incredible effort for the NGA in infrastructure. And just as he finished his infrastructure initiative, Congress finally caught up with the governors and passed a bipartisan infrastructure bill. And so you laid the foundation, Governor Hogan, and I hope that I have, in my initiative, laid a foundation for further growth in the future, just as Governor Murphy is going to lay a foundation for a lot of action after we finish that time. So I would like to see the NGA continue to measure progress in these initiatives, not just in the year, but in the following years, because the governors now signing this compact, you're going to make a difference in your states. We want to be able to record that. We want to rejoice in that success. And we want to showcase nationally what the governors have done in terms of computer science education and moving the ball forward for technology in our schools. And then finally, beyond that, I wanted to thank again Phil Murphy for being a good vice chair. And that's a qualification for being a good chair, by the way. But Phil's been a great partner, and everyone knows the level of disagreement that we naturally have in our society today, but we showcase that we can negotiate. we can find common ground. We can move Washington in a better direction because the governors can reach agreement as to some important issues that impact the people of our states. So, Phil, you've been an incredible partner for us. And with that, it's time to recognize the NGA's 2022 leadership, and it's my privilege to confirm the nominating committee's vote to elect New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy as NGA 2022-2023 chair. Please give Phil a round of applause. And then the incoming vice chair will be Utah Governor Spencer Cox. Congratulations, Spencer. I'm also pleased to announce the nominating committee's approval of the following governors to serve as members of the executive committee: Governor Jared Polis, Colorado; Governor Roy Cooper, North Carolina; Governor Doug Burgum, North Dakota; Governor Chris Sununu, New Hampshire; Governor Kathy Hochul, New York; and Governor Kevin Stitt, Oklahoma. Congratulations to all of you, and thank you for your leadership and best wishes for a successful year. Now, to make this official, Governor Murphy, if you would come and join me at the podium for a gavel handoff. I haven't pounded this enough, by the way, before I give it up. But this is terrific. It says New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy, Chair, National Governors Association, 2022-2023. Phil, it's all yours. Congratulations.
Thank you, Asa. It means so much. Thank you, man. Thank you. Wow. That's pretty cool. May I ask us one more time? Asa has said it well. These are tough times to find common ground, and I don't think we've ever had a better leader than Governor Asa Hutchinson and First Lady Susan Hutchinson. So let's give them a huge round of applause. And there are many folks who are behind the scenes who make this work. And ACE's Chief of Staff, Allison Williams, has been an absolute joy to work with. And I want to give Allison and the whole team a shout out. We will miss you all, but I know you will not be hard to find, and you'll stay in the game. I know you will. Many of you have asked me about my attire today. I agreed many months ago at a request from Governor Janet Mills from noon to 2 today to sell ice cream down at the harbor, and Janet only thought it was appropriate that I wear a seersucker suit, and I want to give my friend J.B. Pritzker a shout out for having noticed that. So it's a treat to be with you today, and I have to tell you, I am incredibly humbled by this opportunity. And kind of ironically, the first order of business, and I'm going to get to the terrific Governor Spencer Cox and his great First Lady Abby Cox in a moment. But before I do that, my first responsibilities is to bid farewell to a number of governors who are going to be leaving the stage this year. And I'll start with a couple who are not with us today, but I want to give an in absentia shout out to Hawaii Governor David Ige, Nebraska Governor Pete Ricketts, and Oregon Governor Kate Brown for their service, extraordinary service. And I also want to give a shout out to a guy who was with us last night, and that is not quite a neighbor, but just to the south of here, Governor Charlie Baker, who I don't think is with us today. He and Lauren have been great leaders in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And as a point of personal privilege, I've known Charlie literally for 50 years next month. We believe we're the only two governors in American history who are both in the same high school graduating class and college graduating class. So to all the governors who are not here, including Governor Baker and his First Lady. Let's give them a shout out and thank them. And boy, do I have some Charlie Baker stories, and I guarantee you he has some stories about me, so I'm just as well he's not here. I want to give a shout out to a couple of the folks who are actually in the room. And I want to first recognize Arizona's Governor Doug Ducey, who's become a good friend over the past many years, and we're going to miss you. Doug's a former businessman and CEO of Cold Stone Creamery. He served as Arizona's 32nd state treasurer before being elected as Arizona's 23rd governor in 2014. He was then reelected in 2018 with more votes than anyone in Arizona state history. And throughout his tenure as governor, Governor Ducey has been a champion of education. Since he took office, Arizona has invested over $8 billion with a B dollars into K through 12 education and brought per pupil funding to a record high. As a 2021 Executive Committee member with the NGA and a member of the NGA's Community Renewal Task Force, Doug has worked hand in hand with the governors of the 55 states and territories to develop bipartisan policy solutions on a whole range of issues. Again, he's a really good guy. We wish you nothing but the very best. Your First Lady, Angela Ducey, is right by your side. You've been an incredible duo. You've led Arizona with great distinction. Let's hear it for the Duceys. God bless you guys. Next up, the aforementioned, as Asa referred earlier to, I want to recognize Maryland's governor. Another guy who's become a very good friend, Larry Hogan. Governor Hogan was sworn in as the 62nd governor of the state of Maryland in January of 2015. In 2018, he was reelected to a second four-year term, receiving, again, the most votes of any Maryland gubernatorial candidate and becoming only the second Republican governor to be reelected in the 242-year history of the state of Maryland. Prior to his election in 2014, Governor Hogan, who had never before, by the way, held elective office, spent more than 25 years building and running small businesses in the private sector. In 2011, he founded Change Maryland, the largest nonpartisan grassroots citizens organization in state history, which is dedicated to bringing fiscal responsibility and common sense to state government. During his tenure as governor, Governor Hogan was a champion on a variety of key issues, including education, economic issues, the opioid crisis, and, as Governor Hutchinson mentioned, infrastructure. In 2019, he was unanimously elected chairman of this body, the National Governors Association, and as NGA chair, Governor Hogan pulled governors together during the onset of COVID-19, uniting them on a weekly basis to align on bipartisan strategies to combat the pandemic. Larry, those weekly video calls feel like they were a century ago, but at the time they were the most important things any of us were doing. During his chairmanship, Governor Hogan also launched a year-long national infrastructure initiative, as Asa mentioned, Foundation for Success, which focused on rebuilding, repairing, and modernizing America's infrastructure in order to grow the economy, create jobs, and meet the needs of the 21st century. The governor led stakeholder summits in Boston, Detroit, San Francisco, and Australia. He concluded his chairmanship in August of 2020 by establishing an NGA staff position to continue driving his infrastructure initiative through January of 2023. To you, Larry, to your extraordinary First Lady, Yumi, we thank you for your service to the state of Maryland and to the National Governors Association, and wish you nothing but the best in the years ahead. Next up, I'd love to recognize my neighbor and another dear friend, the governor of the Keystone State, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Tom Wolf. Before he was governor, Governor Wolf was the owner of the Wolf Organization, a distributor of lumber and other building products. Governor Wolf bought this family business and grew the company, eventually more than quintupling the business in size. He did this with smart leadership and by treating his employees fairly, even sharing the company's profits with workers. As governor, Governor Wolf took immediate actions to provide health insurance to more than 720,000 Pennsylvanians by expanding Medicaid and has reduced the Commonwealth's uninsured rate to the lowest it has ever been. He has given more than 50,000 seniors the opportunity to age in their homes. As a member of the NGA's Community Renewal Task Force, Governor Wolf has worked hand in hand with myself and other governors to develop bipartisan policy solutions on numerous issues, including workforce housing, nutrition, education, criminal justice, agriculture, and broadband. And may I say, as a neighbor, and I know John Carney shares this passion with me and Larry and others who are in the neighborhood, you could not have a better neighbor, could not have a better leader, particularly in a time of crisis as we all faced during the awful pandemic. Tom, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for your extraordinary leadership in Pennsylvania. To you and Francis, you've been a great duo, and we wish you nothing but the very best in the years ahead. God bless you both. Hold on a second here. Everybody good? Oh, here it is, yeah. Sorry about that. And last, and certainly not least, I'd like to recognize Arkansas Governor and NGA Chairman Asa Hutchinson. Governor Hutchinson has been a longtime leader in Arkansas. He was appointed as U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Arkansas by President Ronald Reagan. In 1996, he won the first of 3 successive terms in the U.S. House of Representatives. During his 3rd term in Congress, President George W. Bush appointed him Director of the Drug Enforcement Administration and later as an Undersecretary in the newly created Department of Homeland Security. As Governor of Arkansas, Governor Hutchinson has been a leader on a number of issues. His experience has established him as a national resource for his expertise on trade, energy, national security, and education. The governor has appeared on numerous Sunday shows and continues to, I might add, and has met with presidents and key White House officials many times over on both sides of the aisle over his career for discussions about health care, Medicaid, and education issues, among others. As the 2021-2022 chairman of the NGA, Asa has worked to enroll more high school students in computer science classes while aligning K through 12 and post-secondary educational institutions with the current and anticipated future needs of industry, and along the way by gaining national recognition for his efforts in Arkansas. And we've seen that up close and impersonal. Through his 2021-2022 NGA Chairman's Initiative K through 12 computer science education, Governor Hutchinson has worked to promote his state's best practices in addition to engaging other governors on their strategies for success to help increase computer science literacy around the country needed for the jobs of the future. To you, again, one more time, Governor, to you and Susan, the extraordinary First Lady, thank you for your extraordinary leadership in Arkansas and of the National Governors Association. Amen to that. As Governor Hutchinson mentioned, we've got an extraordinary slate of leadership, and I'm humbled to stand alongside of them, and none more so than Utah Governor Spencer Cox. He is here with his extraordinary First Lady, Abby Cox, and I wonder, Spencer, if you would not mind saying a few words. Thank you. Let's hear it for Governor Cox.
Thank you so much, Governor Murphy. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an honor of a lifetime, and as my wife reminded me, going through the rigorous process to become the vice chair, process consisting of no one else wanted to do it. I'm incredibly humbled to be here, and I just want to thank the tribute that was given to our outgoing governors. You've left legacies in your states, and I know you know that, and that's very important, but I want you to know that your legacy extends far beyond your states. As I look around at those that were just mentioned, I have copied you all in so many ways. Utahns are benefiting because of your leadership and the legacy that you're leaving, and I want to thank you for that. I'm very grateful for the opportunity that I have to serve with Governor Murphy, and we're excited to spend more time with them. I served as lieutenant governor in my state for 7.5 years, so I'm a really good number 2, and I assure you that you have our full support, that we will work incredibly hard to support your initiative, because as we're going to learn more, it is something that we should all be focused on, and I'm grateful for your leadership and can't wait for our partnership over the coming years. I'll just conclude by saying this. I hope you all got a chance to see NASA's new telescope, the Webb telescope, and those incredible pictures that are coming back to us of innumerable galaxies and seeing into deep space. I hope it made you feel a little small, maybe at times a little inconsequential, because that's how I felt, just in awe of what is out there. Just billions of planets. There has to be life out there somewhere. And the reason I hope you felt that is because I felt something in looking at that. And what I felt was that we fight about some really stupid shit sometimes. And
Amen.
I apologize. My wife said I can't use my farm words anymore, and I'm working on that. But my point is that the things that we have in common, our ability to work together, means so much more than most of the things that we fight about in this country today. And I think there's an exhausted majority out there that are pining, longing for people in our positions to work together. And other people have said this, not me, that the governors are kind of the last adults left in the room. When it comes to politics, I believe that, and I believe they're in this room right now. I'm grateful for your leadership, and I can't wait to work together with you. Thank you.
Oh, man, I love that. I love that. Abby, please allow him to continue to use some of those words from time to time. Talk about landing a punch. They're not leaving, but I do want to acknowledge all of the other governors who are with us. This is showing up, as somebody once said, is 80% of life, and I think getting in this room together. We had an incredibly productive breakfast meeting this morning. This has been incredibly productive. So to Governor Cooper, Pierluisi, Burgum, I already mentioned several of you guys, John Bell Edwards, Governor Carney, JB, thank you to each and every one of you for making the effort to be here on behalf of the NGA, because getting in these rooms together is part of the magic. So deep thanks. And Spencer, I can't wait to work with you, and I know Tammy shares the same for Abby. And again, Asa and Susan have set the bar for the rest of us. So I want to just say a few words if I can. First of all, I'm incredibly humbled to take this position. And I have to say, we did some research. I'm the first chair ever from the great state of New Jersey. So, hey. That and $3.89 will get you a grande latte at Starbucks. To Spencer, thank you for your words and your willingness to join me in what I anticipate to be an equally productive and rewarding partnership for the year to come, as we just saw in the year behind us. I greatly appreciate your leadership and support. And again, to all of my colleagues from across our nation, from state to Commonwealth to territory, I am energized by the prospect for our continued progress. And there's a reason for this. Since its founding in 1908, this association has stood steadfast to its mission to facilitate bipartisan solutions. And in our polarized times, this is the example that we must make for the residents that we have the privilege and honor to serve. even if NGA did nothing more, as I mentioned a minute ago, than get us all in a room together a few times a year to talk with each other and listen to each other, it would be a worthy purpose. But the NGA has fostered opportunities to create and refine policies and programs that truly make a difference in our states. And any of you who have gotten to know me know that one of my lifelong heroes was President John F. Kennedy. And it was he who said, and I quote the president, "Let us not seek the Republican answer or the Democratic answer, but the right answer." He said that, in fact, before he was president in February of 1958, yet those words still ring true. And however much I revere those words and the man who said them, I would also like to always keep in mind words of a more recent vintage, and I quote him, "There must be no room for contempt or hate. We are friends. We must always be friends." Those words were spoken by that guy, our Vice Chair, Governor Spencer Cox, in his 2021 State of the State address. He may have been speaking to his fellow residents of Utah, but he very well spoke for all of us. I do not expect over the course of the next year any of us are going to take our hats off as either Democrats or Republicans. In fact, I know that we each wear these hats and the respective underlying ideals they espouse with great pride, and that's good. But I would ask that we continue to endeavor to look beyond and below these hats and in each other's faces and recognize that we are partisans third, governors second, and Americans first and foremost. To be honest, most of our constituents don't really care what party we represent. They elected us to deliver solutions. They asked us to lead our states to make their lives and those of their families and neighbors a little better. And again, to be honest, they, like the majority of Americans, just want us to find common ground. I like that phrase, the exhausted majority. I'm confident that we can succeed. I'm confident that we can continue to prove that states are, as the Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis once said, and I quote him, the laboratories of democracy. One way the NGA works to prove these words are through the annual Chairs Initiatives. And I've seen very successful Chairs Initiatives since I took office in New Jersey in 2018. Former Governor Brian Sandoval's to modernize energy and transportation infrastructure. Former Governor Steve Bullock's to create more good American jobs. Governor Hogan's initiatives, as Asa mentioned earlier, for stronger national infrastructure in all its forms. And for the past year, Governor Hutchinson's computer science education initiative. Following in their molds, I am honored to take the cover off of my 2022-2023 Chairs Initiative on strengthening youth mental health. We are all aware of the youth mental health crisis. We are all aware of the youth mental health crisis in our country. It is a crisis that the pandemic did not create, but exposed more fully. It is one that we must tackle together and tackle now. This initiative, as we envision it, will have four distinct yet very much complementary pillars, and please allow me. The first pillar is prevention and resilience building, with a clear focus on creating welcoming, supportive, and healthy environments for children to grow into productive and healthy adults. Environments that seamlessly weave age-appropriate mental and behavioral health tools into the fabric of children's lives through in their schools, homes, and communities. Secondly, reducing the stigma associated with mental health challenges by normalizing and making it so young people not only know how to access help, but know how to ask for it. And when they do, we will back them up with access through education, helplines, and necessary state services centered always on empathy. To this point, that we know that our nation's mental health workforce is depleted, leading to care that is in some cases too expensive and in others nearly inaccessible, whether by distance or time. So meeting these twin challenges will be our third pillar, building a robust system of supports by leveraging innovative funding opportunities that can supplement and amplify our own existing in-state investments and programs. And finally, pillar number 4, providing parents, caregivers, and educators the training and support that they need. We know that when adults suffer mental health challenges, so do the children in their care. Adults who are empowered in managing their own mental health are better equipped to identify negative signs and to provide positive supports for youth. I've chosen strengthening youth mental health as this year's Chair's initiative because as challenging as the previous 2 years have been for us adults, we know the strain is nothing compared to what too many of Americans' children are under. The youngest have missed out on critical education and socialization opportunities during their most formative years. Preteens and teens missed out on milestones that look forward to for the whole of their young lives: graduations, proms, sports, senior trips, summer camps, and so on. They missed time with family and friends, and too many of them sadly lost family and friends. And while it's easy for us to say we're getting back to normal, which God willing we will be, we know that road back has a few more twists and turns and a few more bumps for those who may not have the ability especially to fully understand why they are feeling the way they do. We know that the rates of stress reported by our young people are extraordinarily high. Now, I think we all remember how tough it was to grow up and the educational, emotional, and other challenges we all faced. But I cannot imagine what it has been like for millions of American children who had the very notion of stability completely upended. And that's, by the way, for those who were living in stable families. We know that there are many other children who were already falling through the cracks, children already living with a mental health challenge and who the pandemic tried to swallow up whole. As governors, one of, if not our most important and sacred responsibilities, is to our state's children. It is our jobs to ensure their safety. It is our jobs to ensure their educations. It is our job to ensure their health and well-being, both physically and mentally. Naturally, each state will find its own path to achieving these goals. Several states are already pursuing some of these priorities through NGA programs. We have a good foundation upon which to build. And as states are these, I mentioned, the laboratories of democracy, so too are states the laboratories for innovation. So throughout the course of this year, I will welcome your ideas, and I'm eager to hear what works and what doesn't. And God knows, to our generous supporters in the audience today and funders, we need your help to make this program as successful as it can be. We'll be announcing our first few collaboration sessions soon, but make no doubt this conversation starts today. I thank you all again for the honor to serve as chairman of this great institution, the National Governors Association. And again, I thank Governor Spencer Cox for joining me in this endeavor, and I thank each of you for your partnership. To Executive Director Dollar Bill McBride and the terrific team at the NGA headquarters, I look forward to the next 12 months. Again, I reiterate to Janet Mills and Team Maine, what an extraordinary conference this has been. Amen. Asa and Susan, one more time, thank you for your extraordinary leadership and friendship. Now we're going to have a terrific opportunity to help formally kick off this year's Chair's Initiative. I'm proud to welcome my wife and partner, New Jersey First Lady Tammy Snyder Murphy, to the stage. Throughout our administration, Tammy has focused her efforts on the critical issue of maternal and infant health, bringing together the health care, academic, and advocacy communities through her innovative Nurture NJ initiative. We are hoping to explore ways to holistically support families this coming year, and to that end, Tammy will lead a spouses initiative that looks to similarly address the maternal and infant health crisis facing the United States. The issues she has keyed on have many parallels with youth mental health. And to help us explore these connections, please join me in welcoming not just First Lady Tammy Murphy, but our other panelists who will be introduced by our moderator from Children's Hospital in Colorado, Heidi Baskfield. So come on down, folks. Hello, sweetie.
Do you know where anybody's?
Do we have an order? Do you care where we sit?
I think I'm on the far end.
You're on the far end? Okay.
Where? Oh, okay.
You okay here?
Yep.
Hi, Amy.
Well, good morning-ish. I think this is technically the brunch hour. I want to thank the governor and the first lady. Of course, it takes a governor, a first lady, a doctor, and a Kennedy to adequately follow Dolly Parton. I can assure you we're feeling the pressure as we speak. And while Dolly pleaded with Jolene not to take her man, Timothy pleaded with me not to jack this up and keep us moving. So I'm going to go ahead and kick us off here. I'm Heidi Baskfield, the Vice President of Population Health and Advocacy at Children's Hospital, Colorado. And the reason that I'm here is that in May of 2021, we declared a pediatric state of mental health emergency in the state of Colorado. What that did was transformed the relationship that we now have with our governor, Jared Polis, in understanding that you can't create and function a system of youth mental health care without the effective leadership and partnership of a governor. Since that time, our partners at the Children's Hospital Association, the AAP, and ACAP have similarly declared a national state of emergency with the Sound the Alarm campaign, with over 60 organizations nationwide and 70 children's hospitals joining in, giving voice to what is very much a real mental health crisis. On stage with me, I'd like to introduce just a few phenomenal individuals. First, the Amy Kennedy with the Kennedy Forum. After several years, yes. After several years as an educator, community leader, and probably the most important, mother of 5, Amy is uniquely positioned to speak about and lead efforts in bringing about improved social, mental well-being for our children. Next is Dr. Marianne Etebe. Marianne is an incredible global leader who serves as the Assistant Vice President for Equity at Merck and leads a $500 million global campaign to address maternal health and to ensure that women across the globe no longer need to lose their life in the process of bringing children into it. So please help me welcome both Amy and Dr. Etebe. And of course, last but certainly not least, is a powerhouse of a First Lady who identified early on in her tenure that it was not tenable that women in this country were still dying as a result of childbirth, and quickly jumped in to lead initiatives in the space of maternal child health. So again, a huge applause for First Lady. Okay, so let's get into the questions. So to start us off, Amy, one of Governor Murphy's key focus areas is on building resilience. Sometimes that feels a little fluffy when we talk about building resilience. Both in individuals and in communities, this is important work. Can you talk about what resilient children and communities look like to you and why it's absolutely not fluffy?
No, absolutely. You know, you mentioned I have 5 kids who are lucky enough to be in New Jersey, where we have great leadership, and what that looks like is they're in school and they're learning about social emotional learning, life skills, things that are preparing them for the inevitable challenges that are going to come with life. We know that that is going to happen, and so being able to give youth the tools that they'll need to address those challenges is really key. Mental Health America has always had the phrase before stage 4. So we know that it's important to intervene early what is that going to look like? How do we teach those help-seeking behaviors to young people so that they can reach out when they are first experiencing difficulty and not wait a decade before they seek help? So it's really a key piece of the curriculum. First Lady Tammy Murphy has done a lot with curriculum in the state of New Jersey in many ways, and making sure it's embedded in every part of what we do. So it is science. It is in your phys ed class. It's part of everyday life, as is all of physical health.
No, thanks, Amy. Governor Murphy, when it comes to the role that governors can play in building resiliency in children and their communities, what are your thoughts on that?
First of all, again, I'm honored to be with this august group. I owe a lot of my deep, whatever depth of understanding I have on mental health to Amy and her husband, Patrick, and their family, who really have transformed my personal and I think our collective view on destigmatizing mental health and thinking of this in a much more holistic way. And I also want to thank Marianne, who's been an extraordinary partner, particularly in maternal and infant mortality, representing Merck. We're blessed in New Jersey with some of the leaders in health and science and bio, and Merck is as good an example as any. And Marianne, thank you so much for that. So we established at the state level an office of resilience, focused on the reality of adverse childhood experiences, and for the folks who are in the field, ACEs, as it were. And so I think it's a whole of top-down, whole of government. It's nothing that uniquely we could do at the state level, but there are things we can do at the community, school, familiar level as well. But building that backbone, that strength of that backbone, is something that we've been committed to. And I would just say right up front, I don't want anybody to think, even though we're proud of a few things we've done, that we have remotely all the answers. We wouldn't be doing this initiative if we had all the answers. So I beg for, whether it's fellow governors, nonprofits, corporates, other supporters, other experts like Amy out there, and there's none better than Amy, we can use I think collectively, all the help we can get.
Thanks, Governor Murphy, and I can assure you, children's hospitals across the country are excited to partner with you on this initiative.
Thank you.
Amy, another pillar of Governor Murphy's initiative is on increasing awareness and reducing stigma. What are some tools that you've seen states effectively deploy on this front, and what would you like the audience to hear more about?
You know, I think young people have already kind of figured this out. We're seeing that on social media and in the ways that they are advocating for themselves, but there is still a tremendous amount of stigma, and being able to reduce that means educating the public more about the potential recovery and positive outcomes that can come from seeking help, because when they know there's hope, that's when we start to see a shift in behaviors, believing that there is a better outcome possible changes our point of view. We know that there's more science needed. I loved hearing Governor Cox talk about the Webb telescope, because it's so indicative of the kind of scientific challenge we need when it comes to the brain. In the same way we've gone to outer space, we have to go to inner space and really do that research to make sure that we have the solutions that are needed. And when people have that, they will see that there are real positive changes possible, but we also need to co-locate behavioral health services with physical health services. We need to make sure that when kids get their scoliosis screening and their eye check, that they can also get a checkup from the neck up, and that these things are not separate and down the hall, but they're co-located and part of their regular physical routine.
Yeah, that's all really great and helpful. Thanks, Amy. Governor, first of all, a huge amount of respect goes into the fact that you've chosen this as your initiative. This is not an easy topic, and there's a lot of work that comes from it. What do you feel like is your role as a governor, and what you would recommend from your colleagues in addressing awareness and reducing stigma?
Yeah, if I had one wish, it would be the normalization of mental health. And that's why, as I say, I give Amy a huge amount of credit for helping us think that through. And again, we're an unfinished product on that front. We were on a family vacation recently playing a lot of sports, and invariably somebody needed arnica, somebody needed pre-wrap, somebody else had a Charlie horse that they needed rolled out. And those are natural, like we all think about, those are natural things. And if my wish, my hope would be to think about mental health challenges just like we think about rolling the Charlie horse out. And that would be a year from now, if we could achieve something that we're all as comfortable talking about a mental health issue as we are about a physical health issue, we will have succeeded beyond our wildest dreams.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, especially as a mom of 2 little boys.
Get ready for a lot of pre-wrap and arnica.
And a lot of other stinky things, I might add. Amy, talk to me about increasing access and why it's so important to think differently about where and how our kids can access mental health care and why those school and community partnerships are so important.
We talk a lot about no wrong door and being able to find this help when and where you need it. That looks different depending on where you live and whether you're in a rural area, whether you're in an area that maybe has lots of providers, but you don't have the insurance coverage to include it. So it could be your pediatrician's office, it might be your school, and it may be through educating parents, also boys and girls clubs, community and faith leaders. Those are the places that we're going to find our points of entry, and being able to train the coaches on what they'll need to know to first identify symptoms and signs, being able to train the crossing guard who is going to come in contact and talk with the young people in the morning and kind of see how the day is going. Those are going to be really important entry points. And then how do we follow up with care? It may be that you're first identifying something in school, and then that handoff needs to be seamless from the school and the community provider and the parent involvement. In New Jersey, we have mobile crisis units, being able to have that multi-tiered system of support, so something for every level of care that's needed, and an integrated system, because the biggest challenge that we hear is parents frustrated, panicked, and unsure of where to turn for help for their young person, that they're in the emergency room,
Yes.
which can be traumatizing in and of itself, and they're stuck in that emergency room for days because there aren't available beds. And how do we get them instead to the level of care that's needed in that moment?
Yeah, thanks, Amy. Governor, when we think about access, so much of that depends on the ability for providers to be available to provide that care. And there are issues and challenges, not just workforce related, but around parity and payment. In Colorado, 80% of our mental health providers are actually private providers, many of whom don't take insurance and aren't doing important things that could better serve and create more affordable access. In the state of New Jersey, that you have been talking about issues around affordable access and parity. Can you talk more about what you've
Absolutely. We talk a lot about what good is a right if you don't have access to that right, not just in mental health, but across a whole range of policy areas. Something that has made a difference, actually, 2 pieces that I think have made a difference. We put in place something called the Children's System of Care, CSOC or CSOC, which essentially is mental health services, overwhelmingly telephonic, for anybody who's from the age of 5 to the age of 21, regardless of their insurance status. So just put that out there, something that we put in before the pandemic. Again, it's a mistake. I think we'd all agree to conclude that the pandemic created all this. It just made a lot of what we were already dealing with a lot more acute. I think you'd agree, Amy, a lot more acute and a lot worse. And so breaking through that equality, that access point has been a big deal. And again, it's a work in progress. We're not patting ourselves on the back. But Amy mentioned mobile units. We also have put in place mobile units and as part of the CSOC, as it were. It's quite striking. I believe this is right. My colleagues can correct me if they see this differently. In the last month alone, I think the mobile units took 4,000 calls. Now, we're a state of about 9.3 million folks. I'm not sure how many of them are kids off the top of my head, but 4,000 calls in 1 month is pretty darn striking. So that's another element that I think we've learned from Amy and her expert colleagues. You got to be able to go where the crisis is, as opposed to make them find you. You've got to be nimble and find them.
Thank you. We applaud you for that. Well, in an effort to make sure that I keep us moving, I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit here.
Please.
I want to ask both you, Amy, and Governor Murphy, what do you think are the biggest obstacles right now in tackling this crisis? Amy, if you want to start.
You know, of course, funding is always a concern. I think also embedding the technology that's needed to really make the connections so that people can seamlessly move through the system. Parity that the governor spoke about is going to continue to be a challenge. We know that to build out the workforce that's needed, that we have to have the reimbursements and make sure that we've got people in place to address the needs and be able to specialize the care for the challenges that are being faced. And that includes the challenges of the caregivers themselves, really, whether it's the educators or the parents who are also struggling, being able to include them in our solutions will be really important.
Yeah, on that last point, I mentioned the fourth pillar is to focus on the caregivers, the educators, to make sure that they are sufficiently aware, be able to spot the signs, be able to know what to do. And I think we can't. I think we ignore that fourth pillar at our peril. But I continue funding certainly, and again, I'll give a big plea out there. The more robust this next year can be, as well as on the infant and maternal mortality side, the better the results I think we're going to have. But in terms of ongoing funding, none of this stuff comes cheap. So that to me is always going to be a challenge. Can you prioritize funding for programs like this in the context of, I'm sure my fellow governors would agree, a lot of priorities. But I would come back again to stigma and destigmatizing this and normalizing mental health. That would be my dream, to normalize it. Think of it just like you would a bump or, God forbid, a broken arm. That this is just part of what it is like to be a human being, particularly a young child in America today, and that would be, again, my dream.
Well, coming from the front line and telling you that every single day in the emergency department in Colorado, we're seeing on average 8 to 10 children every single day coming into the emergency department experiencing some form of suicidal ideation, children living in emergency department rooms because they can't access the care that they need, and having suicide as a leading cause of death for children over the age of 10. Your initiative is coming at a critical time. So talk to us, just wrap us up here with, in addition to reducing stigma, what do you hope for with this initiative, and where do you hope we're going to come back and talk about this a year from now with your colleagues?
May I say one quick sidebar before
Please.
we turn to my left?
Yes.
Which is equally, if not more important. We had a governor's only breakfast today, and it was a big part of our discussion was focused on school safety, gun safety, and we all, I think, concluded without reservation that mental health was a big element in that scourge and that challenge. I think it's destigmatization. I think it's sharing best practices. Spencer spoke about an app in Utah, which things like that. There are things that I suspect that we are each doing that we can break some walls down and share with each other. I think it has to be at some level, whether it's at the state level, privately funded, federal, I'm not sure where, it's probably a mix of all three, a higher prioritization of funding mental health programs. I would think would be part of it. So a year from now, you'd have less stigma. We would have shared a lot of really good best practices, and we would have put our money where our mouth is on programs that we know work and deliver a better mental health for our kids.
That's fantastic, and I can assure you we'll be excited to talk about that a year
That'd
from
be
now.
great.
Governor Carney already knows that I'm going to follow up, and we'll be excited to talk more about all of this. Now I want to talk with the First Lady and Marianne, because it is true that the focus on maternal child health is such a critical component of the overall efficacy in mental health. So let's talk, Madam First Lady. I'd like to give you an opportunity to just tell everybody what you're up to and why this is so important to you before we get into some questions.
Thank you, Heidi. It is really an honor and a privilege to be here with this august group from New Jersey up here on the stage, I have to say. But before I say anything about what we've been working on for 4.5 years now, I have to thank ASA, I have to thank Susan for being such incredible leaders this last year and paving the road. I know Allison has worked hard with ASA. I know Misty Hunt has worked very hard with Susan, and a deep appreciation for Misty, as well as George Helmy and Stephanie Lagos. So just a few shout outs there really quickly. And Abby, can't wait to work with you this year, so I'm really excited about that. I think that the most important thing to know is that the United States should be at the cutting edge in terms of healthcare, period. Right. And when Phil came into office 4.5 years ago, and we found out that the United States was 55th in the world in terms of maternal mortality rates, it was pretty clear as a mom and a dad of 4, and I think for almost everyone, we all love the kids and the babies, and so it was a real passion moment and a moment of, this can't be, we've got to fix this. We have spent the last 4.5 years really trying to break down silos, to bring all the good work that so many people are doing out into the open and to support our mothers and our families. There is a tremendous amount of work to do, but there are a lot of opportunities in this space as well. We spent a year with 14 national experts really trying to come up with a plan that would help lead us from the horrible place where we are in New Jersey to a much better place in the nation. We have created a strategic maternal and infant strategic plan that has 70 action steps. Marianne and her team have been part of this process, and we have already tackled over half of these. And I feel like we are in a really good place to help promote this plan across the country and really help other states that are trying to figure out what can we do to improve the situation. We do not have all the answers, and I am so looking forward to working with everyone here and all of the teams who stand behind the governors and the first ladies and their spouses to make sure that we are coming to the best place possible by the end of next year.
Thank you. I want to ask both you and Marianne a question around what should state leaders be doing when it comes to partnering up with community stakeholders and other important organizations and how they tackle maternal health. I don't know that as many states are as advanced in coming up with as an effective plan of which you've led. So I'll start with Marianne and then Madam First Lady, if you can speak to that point.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, Heidi. I always say maternal mortality is a vital sign, but it's not just a vital sign of our health system, it's a vital sign of our society. And so for state governors to take on this cause is essential, for us to solve for the issues. First Lady Murphy, you talked about the shock that you had, when you realized just what the statistics are in this country. I think something for everyone to know is that we are going in the wrong direction, and we continue to go in the wrong direction. So however bad it is for us who are giving birth today, if we continue these trends, it's going to be worse for our children, and it's going to be worse for their children. And so when you think about the ways that we can collaborate across sectors, because as I mentioned, it's a vital sign of our society. The collaboration that is happening at the community level needs to be spread, needs to be supported, needs to be surfaced, needs to be elevated, and that's what all of you can do. Merck for Mothers, was created about 10 years ago now, and our company has committed $650 million. That may seem like a lot of money, but it's a drop in the bucket of what we need to do, because this is going to take more than just interventions, at the health system level. So from a governor's perspective, I think it's how can we support what's happening at the neighborhood level, at the county level, at the city level? How can we connect the dots between the deaths and the risk for deaths that are happening outside of facilities? So for example, now, while we've seen some improvements in deaths that are happening in hospitals, we're actually seeing a rise of deaths that are happening in the community. And so I think it's really important to, as you've done, First Lady, to create initiatives like Nurture New Jersey that allows for those community-based work to be linked to state-led efforts.
First Lady Murphy, how can governors mimic what you've been doing and share a few of the details that you have so successfully accomplished in the last 4.5 years?
Well, I would just say we do nothing unless we do it all together. I mean, this scourge is something that really touches every single one of us at every level of society. And so and one thing I've neglected to say earlier is that if you are, it's bad enough that the numbers are where they are, but if you are a Black woman in America, your chances of dying through childbirth are 2 to 3 times greater than that of a white woman. So we have to call that out for what that is, and we need to have complete change up and down the spectrum. We have been really fortunate through my office. We've created Nurture NJ, which is our statewide awareness campaign, and we have this strategic plan, but we are out in the community every single day. We are bringing the mothers into all the work we are doing. We are meeting with, we have thousands of stakeholders across New Jersey who really are coming together across many different platforms. I would say to our partners in philanthropy, we have been able to really work together, and our partners have enabled us to bring mothers into panels, have been able to have given them stipends so that they are able to participate and give us the feedback that is so essential that we all need to have. And I thank them all for that, but I also know that, like Marianne and others, that these partnerships are very important, because it's not just the money, it's giving the opportunity and the voice to these families and these women so that they can share what their challenges are, and we can collectively then tackle them together.
May I throw one thing in, Heidi?
Please.
Sometimes when you have a mountain to climb that's so steep, whether it's mental health or where we stand as a nation, or in our case, our state, on infant and maternal mortality, sometimes you feel like you need a moonshot, and that's the only way you're going to climb that mountain. And I think to some extent we do need that. But I'll tell you, very basic, what can we do? And I thank Tammy and her colleagues are the reason why. Here's a basic one. I signed a law last year that requires X number of visits by a healthcare professional to your home after you've given birth to a child, just to make sure, there's no playbook, so the stuff you don't know. I can tell you, I don't know how they allowed us to bring our firstborn home from the hospital, given how ignorant we were, but we stumbled through. But also, are there signs of nutritional shortcomings, or, God forbid, domestic abuse, the so-called social determinants of health? So that, to me, is a very practical, and I give you a lot of credit for that, very practical step. We're not the only state that's done that, but that makes a difference, I think. Is that fair?
Totally, and that is one of the ways that these two initiatives really tie together, because when a nurse is able to go into a home and visit a mother within the first 2 weeks, there's a big difference between showing up in a doctor's office. You don't know if they're wearing their Sunday finest clothing. You don't know what transportation challenges they had to get there. You don't know if they have domestic abuse, if they have mental health challenges that are existing in the home. And so many of these things will be surfaced, and then we're able to connect all of the resources that exist in society and bring it home. I think that is one of the 43 pieces of legislation that Phil has signed in this space, and it is my favorite one.
I appreciate you mentioning that. I actually remember right before going on maternity leave with my first child telling my boss I was going to learn Spanish on maternity leave. So just to give you an idea of how clueless I was about how that was all about to go down.
How's your Spanish?
Yeah, bueno. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more, Marianne, about the work that Merck for Mothers is doing with the CDC on the Hear Her campaign and the importance of centering women's voices in this conversation.
No, thank you so much for that question, Heidi. I think Tammy mentioned, the genesis of that collaboration, which is we are seeing Black women, women of color, American Indian and Alaska Native women dying at greater rates than anyone else in this country. Again, those trends are going in the wrong direction. And that fact remains true even when you control for income or education or other socio-demographic factors. So what are we left with? We're left with systemic racism. And when we talk to women to find out what experiences they've had during the birthing process, the thing they tell us again and again is people are not listening to them. Their providers are not listening to them. They are not trusting what they hear. They are not responding to what they hear. And so in response to that, because all of our work is really in response to what we're hearing from women on ground and birthing people on ground, was this collaboration with the CDC called Hear Her, where we are again surfacing the voices and stories of women who have gone through the process. And at the core of that campaign is women know what's happening to them. They know what's happening to their bodies. And so when they say something is wrong, listen. And so we have, on top of all of those campaigns, resources of how providers can hear what is being said and can mobilize and act on what's being said. I think the other exciting thing, and you mentioned, Governor Murphy, what are things that each and every one of you can do, is another initiative where women, as they are being discharged from the hospital, as well as with their partners, are given information on what are the warning signs of post-birth complications. And so when they have those signs, they can alert their care providers, caregivers to them. At least 10 states now have made that a policy so that every woman being discharged from the hospital has that information and knows what to do. So again, simple things that I think we all have the ability to put into place that can save lives.
Marianne, First Lady Murphy, thank you so much for beginning to share the work that you're doing. We are also excited to support this initiative as well. And one last question from both you, First Lady and Governor Murphy, is talk about the real connectivity between your initiatives and how when they work together, they very much strengthen families and how you plan to work together over the next year.
I'm going to start.
Either way.
So that's, I didn't know that was going to be one of the questions, but I'm glad you asked it because I was going to preempt and make that observation. We are, I'll just say this right up front, we're making a bet here that having harmony between these two initiatives will hopefully lead to a 1 + 1 = 3 result. We each independently reviewed a whole number of areas that we could have pursued, and they were all worthy, but in most cases they were not sympathetic with each other. Mm-hmm. And so I think I would say that each one of these, whether it's mental health among our children or infant and mortality rates that are unacceptable in our country, that there is an opportunity to have some amount of overlap and have a result a year from now that has a little bit of that 1 + 1 = 3 result. Time will tell. We're going to do as Asa and Susan have done so well over the past year. We're going to take this around the country. We'll be coming to your states, many of them sooner than later. But that's a bet we're making. And it's not the first time that the NGA has done it this way, and Bill would correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's been done before. But would love to see this have that result, which is greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, I think what I would say is, when you talked earlier about ACEs, and the fact of the matter is, if you have a child that is subjected to ACEs, as they grow up, they become an unhealthy adult, they then become an unhealthy parent, and it's a toxic cycle, and it just goes over and over and over again. And the real way that I see these two initiatives twinning together is that we're tackling the whole person. If you can have a healthy child, this will fix many of the ills of our country going forward. It's not an overnight switch, but it's an overnight conversation that we all have to have. And I think that, Phil and I, as Phil said, I think we're hoping that one initiative plus one initiative, 1 + 1 = 3 in this situation. And we really look forward to, we also have 4 benchmarks on my side, 4 pillars that we're going to be working on. And I think that at the end of this year, our goal is to produce what we believe will be a playbook that we can then hand over to those states and those others who might want to say, what legislation has been passed, what simple steps can we take in our own space, policy or otherwise, that will help reverse the situation and take our country onto a better path going forward.
May I just repeat something I said earlier? While we care about these topics, while we've done things on each of them, I'm proud of the steps we've taken. We by no means remotely have all the answers, and we need everyone in this room and beyond to help us. So I would just, whether you're a fellow governor or first spouse or a corporate, a nonprofit, other supporter, let's join together as we did so successfully with computer science education. Let's do that again this year, and God willing, we get a result a year from now where we are all better off as a result.
Thank you all. We have just a little bit of time for a couple of questions. So I want to open it up to those of you who I know have not been looking at your phones at all. You've been listening intently and thinking of compelling questions to ask on our new initiative. So who wants to start? Yes.
Doug
Governor
Burgum
Herman.
looks like he's got his hand there.
Well, thank you, Heidi, and thank panelists. It's fantastic new initiative, Phil, and I know that every one of our states is dealing with youth mental health crises, so really appreciate the attention and do agree on the synergy with the infant mortality and the maternal mortality issue. I do have a question, I guess, for Tammy or for Doctor. The shocking differential between African Americans and whites is there, but then you mentioned about indigenous peoples. I think that one of the things that we're on this topic in North Dakota that maybe is where it fits under the 4 pillars, but if we can look at it in the next year, is Indian Health Service is so underfunded, has all the issues. I mean, if there's issues at Colorado Children's Hospital, can you imagine Indian Health, which literally runs out of money by the time they get to the 4th quarter? If there's any other group of Americans where if you said to them, hey, don't get sick in the 4th quarter, I think that translates, don't have a child in the 4th quarter because they run out of money. I mean, there'd be an outrage about this. And for all the debates we've had for the last 20 years on healthcare in America, this is an unspoken, unaddressed issue. But there's also the issue of data, because in a state like ours, where if we care about this, getting data from Indian Health Services is also nearly impossible. And so we don't really know what the situation is. It was referenced here that the indigenous rates are even worse than African Americans. So there's something there that, when we talk about forgotten Americans, that's something when we tackle these, because all the issues of ACEs, all the issues of trauma are all as bad or worse in tribal areas than any place else in America, and we just have to bring that to the forefront.
It's a great heads up. It almost suggests, Doug, that you all may want to do one of your programs out in your neck of the woods to shine a light on it.
Yeah, I would just say to you that it won't be surprising, 2 of the 4 pillars that we're focusing on infant and maternal health are 1, having access to the care, which speaks volumes to what you're saying, and 2, having the data, because having access to that data is so vitally important in order to make decisions and understand where you need to direct resources. So.
Yeah. And I would just add the next phase of the Hear Her campaign is actually going to focus on indigenous populations and really pull them into creating those resources and identifying those solutions.
Great point.
Could I add a little something that might be your three?
Please.
Is with the adverse childhood experiences, we've found that children most likely to die of abuse is that first year or so.
John Bell.
First of all, thank you, Phil and Tammy, for stepping up with the leadership, but the initiative as well. And certainly, we don't have it all figured out in Louisiana, but there are a few things that we're pursuing that I think can make a big difference. And first of all, there is not a family of any size, and I don't care how white or black, rich or poor, no family of any size who doesn't have some experience with mental health issues and addiction problems. So we should be able to destigmatize. A couple of things, by the way, maternal mortality is almost 4 times in Louisiana for African American women. And we are making progress, but boy, is it slow. One of the things that I would encourage governors to consider, and maybe part of the initiative, is we now have the option on Medicaid to do 12 months postpartum coverage. Yep. The standard is 3 months.
Yep.
When we looked at the incremental cost of that, it was much smaller than we thought it would be, so I would encourage people to do that. On the other side of things with schools, since 2014, school-based Medicaid can cover things beyond the individual education plan, including mental health. I think only 17 states have taken full advantage of that, and it's kind of hard because your Medicaid leader and your state education agency have to both do that together. But that's something, now that gets you reimbursement, you still got to find the providers and so forth. And the last comment I'm going to make is we're all trying to make sure that there are no unserved homes with respect to high-speed broadband. That can help with the provision of services, telehealth, including mental health and access to resources. But it also is how young people get bullied. It is how people are body shamed. It is how many things that start off as a small problem with mental illness get magnified. It is how people get radicalized. And as we spend $1.5 billion over the next few years to expand broadband in Louisiana, we ought to spend some money trying to make sure that the ill effects of that are minimized. And I don't have a clue how to do that. But hopefully it's something we can do, maybe tie it to the literacy of the internet so that you don't just learn how to use it, but you learn how to protect yourself and your family from certain parts of it. I don't know, but I'm just think these are things that you all can incorporate potentially into what you're doing that would make a huge difference across the country.
Great points. Great points.
Governor.
Hey, Doug.
Phil, Tammy, I just want to say excellent initiative and so timely post-pandemic. So congratulations to you two. My only regret is that I won't be serving through the entire year, but I'm confident that it will be helpful to Arizona and Arizonans. A couple things. One is we put in our State of the State in the previous year that mental health checkups would be covered just like physicals, and compelled our insurance companies to come along, which they did when we worked with them beforehand. And I think that can go a long way to providing access, and it can go a long way also to reducing the stigma. And then something else that I know, because we both have young children or growing children, I think the kids have really figured this out in many ways. While they're struggling, they don't have the same stigma.
Yep.
They will talk about this, they will talk about it with their other friends, and I think they can really set the examples. We have some clubs around Arizona where they talk about it as the mental fitness club, places where people can go and talk about what they're feeling, share among their peers, get some peer-to-peer counseling, in addition to making investments in doctors and professional counseling. So I do think we can learn a lot. I think the stigma is with our generation.
That's a great point.
And not with the younger generation. And I know the First Lady has a question as well.
Please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
So again, I want to thank you, Tammy and Governor Murphy for taking this on. Our youngest is leaving for college in a month.
Same
And
with us, by the way.
I called to make sure that he had his second meningitis B vaccination before going off to school. And they asked me, did your son sign the waiver to release this information? When we look at onset of typical brain-based disorders being between the ages of 19 and 22, I wonder if there's any appetite or anybody, the way that Mothers Against Drunk Drivers pushed for that 21-year age. You know, a 19-year-old, a 20-year-old, a 21-year-old may not be aware that they are in need of mental health services or care. And as parents, we're paralyzed in this critical age point. So is there any national discussion or appetite for this?
It's a great point. We've got, by the way, a guy going off next month as well, so we're in the same boat. Amy, you should address that, I think, right?
Yeah, so JED Foundation is a really great resource for this. They're on 400 college campuses. They have some suggestions for parents who are sending their kids to college about a waiver so that the information can be shared, making sure that that's signed, and they can give some other suggestions when it comes to which campuses, if you already have a young person who's at risk, could be helpful. But there's also some things that we know we can make progress on when it comes to reciprocity and telemental health services, so that if your young person is already receiving treatment at home, but they want to go away to college, how can they have kind of a continuum of care that follows them if they're going out of state, those types of things that might be important. But that waiver is a piece of the JED Foundation's work. So
The foundation again is?
JED, J-E-D, JED Foundation.
JED Foundation.
Well, at this time, I'm getting the signal. I'm definitely getting the signal. Yes. I want to thank you all. I want to thank you personally, First Lady and Governor Murphy, for opening the door for incredibly impactful work. I know we're all really excited to support you over the next year and welcome the ongoing conversations that will come. Thanks to you all for allowing us to talk about this with you today and for participating, and thanks to the NGA.
Yeah, amen. Amen. I want to echo, Heidi, thank you for being a great moderator, and thank you for all you do in Colorado. Amy and Marianne, you guys are the best. We claim you with great pride as New Jersey's own, but you've got huge national throw weight. And Tammy, thank you for everything you do. This is it, as they say in Hollywood, it's a wrap. So I want to again thank Asa and Susan for having led us to this day and friends forever. I want to acknowledge Spencer and Abby as our new vice chairs and the executive committee. Really excited about working with you. Janet Mills, you've been an extraordinary host, and I know I'll say this on your behalf. To all who can, spend the weekend in Portland and Maine, maybe even another week or two, and enjoy yourself. To fellow governors and first spouses, deep thanks for your leadership and friendship and partnership, and to all of the supporters here of the NGA. This is an existentially important organization, particularly at this moment in our nation's history, and I think we wear as a great badge of honor that we continue to be able to find common ground and common cause, and may that be our guiding light in the year and years ahead. God bless you all. Safe travels.